And we are back. Welcome back to the King's Report this Monday, December 18th, 2017. Sending Report live from the Chani Gung studios to all the kings and queens of the Kingdom of God. Good morning. It is 7-Eleven. There used to be a shop called 7-Eleven, wasn't there? They don't have that anymore in America, do they? They have 7-Eleven still?
I don't see them.
I don't see them at all. I mean, hopefully with the tax cuts and the corporate tax cut rate, we'll see all.
America.
Yeah, I've seen them overseas. Yes. But anyways, folks, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the third hour. We're joined with Patriot John Zangaro. He is a candidate for Pennsylvania State Representative, a very accomplished man. He was a delivery truck customer representative. He was a project manager for natural gas drilling. He was United States Army Infantry active duty soldier from 2006 to 8. He was deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. So a real patriot. The man's done it all. Such a fine. Can I call you a young man? Would you consider yourself a young man, John?
I'll take the
compliment. Now I know you're suffering from a cold, my friend. So we hope that you quickly recover. Thank you so much for joining us again this morning. We're having a fantastic discussion, and I asked your opinion on a lecture I saw by a very prominent military educator, former ranger, etc. And he was saying that he believes that there are soft targets like elementary schools, which jihadis and terrorists will absolutely target. And he believes that will be the next 9/11. And all they need, if you look at their standard operating procedure, so to speak, of how they've attacked, they basically use IEDs and they in vehicles and or fire to kill masses of people. Basically, he was saying fire is a weapon of mass destruction, and he gave cases. Pakistan, I believe, there was other cases where over 100 kids were burned down just by the terrorists, pouring the gas out and lighting it. And it's interesting because he was saying during the lecture, he was giving examples of Israel and even Thailand that have learned by experience that you have to arm the citizens to be able to defend against this kind of terrorism. Because no matter how good law enforcement is, law enforcement folk, but they still take time to get onto the scene, and they don't necessarily enter in immediately. They have to first assess what's going on. But people in the school, if they were armed, would be able to shoot back, and fight back against the terrorists, at least stall them until support came. What were some of the comments that you were saying on that? You were making some beautiful points. Could you repeat those things for our audience?
Sure. I believe that somewhere down the line, we believe that becoming civilized meant becoming lazy and just handing our responsibilities down and such. We used to have those weapons in our schools where we, as far back as elementary school, would train the children on weapons safety courses. We would even take them out to the ranges and teach them to shoot.
That's amazing.
Had we never taken those weapons out of the schools, but they'd still be there. We'd still have trained instructors within the schools, and all the children would even know how to appropriately use them. So that wouldn't be a soft target.
That is, that's so powerful. I was talking with Tig the other day, John Teagan, the Benghazi hero. We had him on a show the other day. And he was saying, when he trains his kids from a very young age, obviously, in firearm safety, but also what he'll do is he'll train them so that, for example, if they see a gun out, then they'll go report to daddy and say, Dad, your gun is out. He'll actually test them that way. So they get used to, coming to daddy when they see a firearm out, they don't have to deal with it themselves. They go to daddy, tell them the firearm is out, and then daddy will help them, or an adult will help them. It's kind of like training the kids. And this is what's great. In the past, as you mentioned, I know one of our members of our congregation here who's going to come with us to Switzerland. We're having a gun rights for Europe conference out there. And Mr. Larry Pratt, the director of, CEO, director of Gun Owners of America, will be joining us in Switzerland with some other folks out there. But it's like Lisa was telling us that when she was young, she's African American, she's from New Jersey. When she was in middle school, elementary school, I guess middle school, she was taught gun safety. She was, they brought them out to the range. They were taught them firearms. I mean, it was such a part of the educational field, that you would teach kids in this thing. Now you have public schools, which it's only demonized. Good people who are armed are demonized all the time. Military vets are demonized. They spread the lie that 40% of returning vets have PTSD, when that's absolutely unscientific, and it's a complete media lie. It's a hoax. The VA, according to the VA, it's only 8%. And the military, in terms of veterans who come back, and they say, 100 vets have murdered people in the United States. When that's compared to the normal population, it actually should be in the thousands over 14 years of warfare. Our vets, if they're compared to the normal citizen population, okay, they should have killed, come back home, and they should have become murderers of over thousands of people, in the thousands. It should be in the thousands. It's only at 100. So it actually proves that our vets are safer. They're not crazies as the liberal lunatics want to make them. They shouldn't be disarmed. They're actually more responsible than civilians. The wars make them stronger on average, and they function as not only successful members of society, but they're less likely to shoot you. They're less likely to go after you as an employer. They're made stronger by their experience. As the Bible talks about, tribulation makes us stronger. Tribulation, gives experience. Experience leads to hope, and hope leads to overcoming. So, tell us a little about I know you've been in Iraq. Did that experience make you stronger as a person? And how was it when you came back? Did you experience any of this demonization or people not wanting to employ you because you were a vet? What was your experience?
Well, if I may go ahead and discuss the PTSD thing first. I don't understand. It doesn't matter if 90% or 2% come back with PTSD. That is not a diagnostic that anyone can rule to be dangerous for someone to have a weapon or not. That's complete. I have to dismiss any scientific value to that. I mean, I know a bunch of people that have been diagnosed with PTSD that weren't even in the military that own weapons. So, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but they claim that, anybody who goes through a traumatic moment has PTSD or is likely to have PTSD. Now, how many people have been through traumatic moments? It can be a car crash. It can be, watching a loved one go through a painful death. It can range through all kinds of things. They say, I believe it's one in 5 or 1 in 7 is raped in here in America, and that right there is enough to cause PTSD to any sound mind. So if you imagine how many people here in America have PTSD, and then you run the numbers of how many people walk around with weapons either on their person or in their homes, the numbers are against this scientific suggestion that PTSD causes some sort of insanity that would disallow you to own a weapon. I mean, it's just not a fact. On top of that,
came back from your service, was it hard to find employment where people they kind of discriminating against you because you served?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Everybody wants to walk up and shake your hand and tell you thank you and make themselves feel better, but nobody actually does anything beyond that. I mean, nobody wants to employ you because there is a, very, very, very minuscule chance that you might have something that could cause I'm not even sure. I'm not going to go down that road. But the issues of finding employment, unless you have a very particular skill set, let's say that you went in and became one of the top leading medical personnel in the U.S. Army, then you might come out and fall into a certain position. But even then, you still need to get particular schoolings and certificates under you. So it's very difficult because you go from, it's not just a career, it's a lifestyle. Your entire life revolves around the Army when you're in it, or rather the military when you're in it. It doesn't matter what branch, because you live within that society. You're pulled outside of the civilian society. You live within there. Your entire life is structured around it from morning, noon, and night. It doesn't matter. You live, eat, and breathe it. And then all of a sudden, you're dismissed from it and you're tossed back out into the civilian life. It doesn't matter if you're in combat or you've never seen it. Now you have to transition back. Mm-hmm. Now, the way that societies ran is completely different than the military. So now you have to restructure your way of thinking, your way of working, your way of speaking, the way you handle yourself in every aspect of life. You don't have a job once you get out. So now you've lost your job. You've probably lost your home, because most of the military lives on base. You've lost your health insurance. You've lost your support group. You've lost everything. So now you're left out on your own. And unless you have built up a large enough account in the military, which most people, 10 years and under don't have that, you have nothing. You're just tossed out there and you're scrambling to find a place in the world and a spot where you're accepted. Do you realize that there is well over 10, potentially 15% of military veterans that have been accepted and approved for the GI Bill, that once they get out, they can't access it? So, I mean, there's even that's stricken from some. I myself, I served in active duty. I have a stamped piece of paper that says I've been approved for my GI Bill. I paid for the entirety. I can't access it. I know a guy who's retired over 2 years in, staff sergeant, retired honorably. He can't access it. There's a lot of people out there that are just left to go and find their own way. Then you have the VA. The VA is completely dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. The vast of them don't really do anything to help the veteran community. Not saying that the people within the VA don't want to, but there's so much bureaucracy and red tape possible. And then you also have to think on top of that, just to get to the VA, there's a large majority of veterans that have to drive up to 80 to 100 miles one way just to get to the VA that they're assigned to. Now, if I may, I spoke with Rick Chacon about this. Now, we all know that he is an Admiral veteran himself, and he has done as much as he possibly can within the State House. He's currently settling in for the candidacy for the U.S. Congress, and him and I discussed the idea about disbanding the VA as it is and making them just a little cell in every local hospital, so that they're more accessible, and that way the people are working within the communities and within the hospital structures, hopefully eliminating some of that bureaucracy.
I mean, it's so unbelievable, because the people who are building up this democracy, the neocons and the leftist, commies on the Democratic side, they're just constantly building up this apparatus. And it's amazing, because what is the greatest threat? I mean, even Hitler, what he used his, what do they call him? His goodness, it slipped my mind. But anyways, the people that he used in order for his coup, he ended up promising them pensions and all this kind of thing. But then they're the first ones he threw under the bus because as he grabbed power, the totalitarians now fear the very people that they used to gain that power, and then they want to disarm those people. And you see the DSM-5, a Diagnostic Statistical Manual of psychological illness or mental health, whatever. They're now making up all sorts of crazy psychological diseases, even if you make critical comments of the government, according to DSM-5, and I guess the newly released 6, you have a mental disorder. What is it called again, guys? Remember that? It's authority. There's a new disorder they made for it, and that's if you criticize the federal government or a bureaucracy. You have oppositional defiance disorder. That's what it is. Oppositional defiance disorder. So, and then you are liable then to get your guns taken away because some psych shrink said you got some kind of made up disease that they say you apparently have. This is totally medical tyranny.
I'd have to agree with you on that. I don't believe that any theory, anybody who studies a theory, not a sound science, should have that much power. And that's exactly what psychology and psychiatry is. It's a theory. It's never been a proven sound science. On top of that, we all have seen that the government uses fear to herd people into categories that they want and in order to grab power. I mean, they utilized 9/11 to expand the NDAA, the National Defense Act. And then you had Barack Obama that expanded it to leaps and bounds to where it actually states that every single person in the world, to include U.S. citizens, are now potential terrorists, and therefore your Bill of Rights is out the window. So I don't doubt that they're using these fear tactics to control society and make people believe these things. I mean, the U.S. military actually uses psychological operations, otherwise known as PSYOPs, to obtain the same exact footholds in Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever they go, wherever their feet hit the dirt. I mean, they use these same exact tactics against.
What's his expert Steve Pachinik he's on InfoWars, he's on Alternative, he's his own channel.
Always exposing the fact that psychological operations are being used through mainstream media to basically the people that you see, the anchors that you see, they're military operatives, and they're already in collusion with the CIA. They're in collusion, Media Matters, you name it, Anderson Cooper, all these people who are supposed to be news anchors and journalists, but they're not only political activists, they're actually military operatives doing psychological warfare upon the American people. Now it's turned on us.
Now that actually began a long time ago during your Vietnam and Korean War. Right. You had the military was using the news media personnel to dissuade or give false information to our enemies. And as such, I mean, whoever watched that media was getting the false information. And they saw how we reacted to it and realized that, yes, they can go ahead and structure it to be used against its own people. The CIA has recently let out a lot of their black ops information from the early onset of when they first began, and I believe the dates brought all the way up to the 60s, if not even more. And if you take a look at that, you'll realize that they've actually done more against America than against any other entity out there. And
well, it's interesting you mentioned the 60s because, like, Operation Northwoods, they were putting that up to Kennedy's desk to literally do terrorist attacks, to blame it on, then blame it on Cuba. And literally they said in the documents, let's blow up, we want to blow up malls. And that passed to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And that went all the way to Kennedy, and he struck it down. But they were trying to do false flag attacks on American soil. That is the US government planning to do it, legally planning, well, not, I don't know, but legally, but trying to do this stuff to blame other countries and start wars.
Well, I mean, you have to wonder, why are the documents all blacked out over just a simple JFK assassination? They can't allow us to read into that. That right there should be, and then then you do have actual people coming out bringing evidence that the CIA utilizes the U.S. military over in Afghanistan for the poppy fields. Ever since the war on drugs, we have been the kingpin in that. I mean, we are the largest.
Oh my gosh. That's what I love about you, John. You're so awake. I mean, we first met, I remember at the NDAA thing with Dan Johnson and everything. Dan Johnson, by the way, was back at our church. He gave a wonderful thing. He's working on some excellent, we do better.org, and he's going to come back. So I'd love to have you there, and just maybe we can get together with Dan and everything. But I was so impressed. Here was this young man, and and you were just so astute, so on point. You knew so much. You were so awake. We're like, wow. I mean, this is like, it's so amazing. And now I'm so happy because now you're not only an activist, but you're going and for a state representative. And that is like so critical because these counties need to be taken back by patriots who are awake. And you lived it. I mean, you served in Iraq, you saw the front line, and you love your country, you love your fellow countrymen and women, and you want to do something about it. And these local areas need to be taken back by patriots.
Absolutely, but it can't happen just because we want it to. It can't happen just because a single person stands up. We need the communities to wrap around patriots like myself and Dan Johnson and others that you've had on here, such as Lou Jazzkov and so on and so forth. I mean, if we don't have the support of the people, then we're not going to be able to do anything to bring forth the change that's necessary. We have to stop expanding all these laws so that we become the subordinates of the government. The government's supposed to be subordinate to us. We're supposed to be the leaders of the government. They're supposed to serve the Constitution and the will of the people. And I can't think in the past 80 years where they've done either one.
And it's against the will of God, because look at, even in the Garden of Eden, God said to his children, Adam and Eve, be fruitful, multiply, have dominion over the earth, and subdue it. He didn't give that blessing to the archangels, even though they were powerful and helped him with creation. He didn't give them the blessing to have dominion and rule and reign over the earth. It's humanity that he gave that. The archangels were supposed to be servant. They're not supposed to be the masters. And so that's why, my father would always talk about, the government as the archangelic force. And of course, it's the most murderous entity on the planet in the last 20th century, murdering over 220 million people by democide.
I believe it was James Madison in the Federalist Papers that stated, we're not governed by angels, therefore we must law basically to break it down, it has to restrain the people within the government, the people who have the ability to expand that power. I mean, anybody who has worked in a vast corporation, they try to work their way up as high as they can possibly get, CEO, president, as far as they can. Why? Because people feed off of power. People thrive for power. They want more power. I'm telling you right now, there are just a very few of us out there that don't want power. As a matter of fact, what we want for nobody to have all that power.
People.
I myself, I have 6 children, a wonderful wife. I've been blessed. I have lots of arrows in my quiver, as the Bible would put it. But when it comes down,
praise God, you're doing your service to humanity.
when it comes down to it, though, I've seen the structure. I've seen what it can do. I've seen the good and the bad. I know that we have a lot of excellent people out there that are exceptional leaders. But one thing that we have to take into consideration is we're not hiring a leader in these positions. We're hiring a servant. We're hiring someone who can take a knee to the Constitution and the needs of the people, and be completely selfless when it comes to the ideas of what the next step is. We have so much regulation here in Pennsylvania. We have so many taxes here in Pennsylvania that most corporations can't breathe within Pennsylvania. So why would more businesses move here? We have people moving to places like Florida and Texas and so on and so forth because their corporate structure makes it so much easier to find a job. And then we have places as liberal as Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont that I couldn't believe it. Their Second Amendment rights are being
well, it's amazing because we have the union issue here. Isn't the union problem like massive? I mean, these politicians getting tons of money from the unions, and they're supposed to be protecting the citizens, but they're in the pockets of these lobbyists and these union bosses.
Well, I know that you have a lot of strong unions all across America, and I'm not going to dissuade anyone from joining a union. I'm not going to talk down about unions. I believe there are a lot of great unions out there. I just believe that they take another look at them and realize, like, for instance, your teachers union, are they really doing what we need for our children? No, they're not a union for your children. They're a union for their employees. Now, do they have some exempt employees? They have some exceptional employees. They have some of the greatest servants out there trying to do it right. But again, the bureaucracy and red tape gets in the way and they're handcuffed. And then you have a union that really doesn't fight for the children. No, because they're fighting for the next penny, the next dollar, the next step that they can get to grab their power.
I mean, what about adding competition so that
the schools would have to compete, public schools would have to compete with private schools, charter schools, people can use their tax credit voucher system so that they can put their taxpayer educational money that they want to put. And the primary tax, the biggest burden that citizens have to burden in Pennsylvania is the education, for education. Why can't our tax credits go to where we want them to go if we want our kids to homeschool, private school, charter school, religious school, public school, give some competition so that the public school doesn't have a monopoly.
You know what? Indiana did something that I'd like to go ahead and bring to the floor of the House here in Pennsylvania should I get elected. It's a wonderful, wonderful idea. It's basically what you were saying, your tax money goes to where you want. Now, the initial point behind it was that, let's say the public school that your kids are going to isn't up to par, isn't meeting the standard that you would like to see, but yet the public school down the road, that one's up to snuff. It's doing well. It's meeting all these expectations. Well, I can pull my kid out of the one that they're in, and as long as that other one has an opening, I can transfer them to any public school that I want, as long as they're able to have an opening for my kid. Now, they did that, and they found that the better public schools were just getting hammered with more and more kids trying to come to those schools, and it started hurting those schools that weren't meeting that standard. Now, like all the teachers unions scream about, well, then it's going to hurt those schools and we're going to lose jobs. No, it didn't. What it did is it ended up forcing those other schools to bring their standard up because they were being so criticized, and they were so critically under the pressure and under the thumb of that community, because everybody saw it, that they ended up bringing their standards up higher than the other schools. And it just became a teeter-totter effect. These schools started fighting to be better.
Right. Healthy competition, that's always good. I mean, Sweden, I mean, look, we're so backwards in terms of our educational system since the Department of Education ever came into existence. And the Horace Mann system, oppression educational system was brought to the US to basically indoctrinate children. But it's like, Sweden, for example, which is very common when on some levels, but in terms of education, they allow for the tax voucher system. They introduce lots of competition for their educational systems so that people can choose where they want to send their kids. And the more competition, the better. It only makes the product and service better, higher quality at a lesser price for the taxpayer. And that's always a benefit for the client.
I believe I saw something. You can let me know if I'm wrong here, but I believe I saw something about South Korea paying some of their top teachers more than we pay some of our top athletes.
Yeah, I don't know about. Is that true?
They said
right, the hug ones. Yeah, you're right, because there's like the private educations. They have like after you go to public school, then your parents or they try to send you to like these private education after school supplementary businesses. They're businesses. They're actually businesses. So it's like nuts. I mean, the Korean moms, they've been really notorious for being what they call helicopter moms and really driving their kids into madness because they just like, it's like literally the kids are studying 20 hours a day. It's a psychological and physical risk to these children's lives. But you're right, they do get paid quite a bit.
and finally start focusing on like you said, bringing competition to the education to each and every school, make them compete against one another to be the best, and then get rid of these things like the No Child Left Behind Act. I believe once you go ahead and get rid of these hindrances that are keeping these educators from actually performing at their highest ability, and then again putting forth the ability for them to compete, I believe not only will it strengthen the education for our children, but we'll also see a lot of the teachers out there that are finally getting what's due to them. Because whenever you have the absolute worst educators mixed in with the best, and they're all structured to be dealt with the same, and there's no difference between them, that kind of kills the soul of the great educators. And again, my children have been to a few different schools here in Pennsylvania. I've seen some exceptional teachers, principals and vice principals, and it just, I feel bad for them. I really do, because I've also seen some horrible teachers. I can't call them educators. They're just there to pick up the pension and pick up a paycheck. They don't care. They do the bare minimum. They tell the kids, read this book and get back to me with whatever the assignment is. And that's not good, because it also kills the passion for learning for the children. And we need to develop these skills within our society. We need to go ahead and
no question about it. We're going to take a short break and be right back with John Zangaro. Stay with us, folks.
Boy, wasn't that fun shooting this Tommy gun today?
It's always fun shooting Tommy guns. This one especially, it's just absolutely gorgeous.
all polished and chromed up. It really looks like $1 million.
Yeah, yeah. Elliot Ness would have loved one of those.
Yeah, and it's available right now in your favorite dealer, and you go pick one up.
Yeah, just have him call your distributor.
I mean, the gun, was initially made way back when, back in the 27 is this one.
Yeah, Model
But
27.
I was surprised by how quick it knocked down those plates.
Oh, 3.5 second run, under 3.5 second run, knocking down a plate right. 341.
I mean, the gun is heavy. It's about, 12, 14 pounds, especially with this drum, but it's surprising how quick you can go with it. It would actually make quite a good self-defense rifle at home.
If I climbed in somebody's window and they were aiming that at me, I think I'd get out of there real quick. So
that sounds about right to me.
Just the intimidation factor alone.
Fire!
And we are back, folks. Welcome back, Monday, December 18th, 2017. We are here with Mr. John Zangaro. He is a candidate for PA, Pennsylvania State Representative. Very exciting. He is a true patriot, veteran, young, handsome dad of 6, and very capable. John, there are some tax plans that you've been working on with many different thinkers around Pennsylvania, and things like that. Let's talk about that a little bit, and of course, let us know when the elections are coming up, and what the best way, of course, to support you in your candidacy is. But first, let us know about the tax plan.
Well, I appreciate you letting me talk about this a little bit. I decided that certain things need to be done and that no one else was doing it. So I reached out to some of the activists within the community that are exceptionally skilled in their knowledge for writing legislation. If I may, I'd like to go ahead and throw the names out there. One of the greatest, I consider my mentor. He's an exceptionally skilled and knowledgeable gentleman. His name's Aaron Bollinger. Aaron Bollinger has done amazing things with the legislation. He actually started, it's called the Sherman Institute. It's an online education. You can access it, look it up, Sherman Institute. Then there's Dan Gray. A lot of people know who Dan Gray is. He's an activist within the community. He's very knowledgeable. He knows a lot of the key players in the House and Senate. And then there's a gentleman, Bob McNeil. He ran for the presidency as a third party. A lot of people don't know him, but his platform was to bring back a constitutional tax. Now, over the past decade, he's been taking on his own time and dime, taking on the IRS and winning against them. He's been fighting the platform that what they do and how they go about their business is unconstitutional. And he's been winning so much that the courts have been trying to shut him up, that the government. Now he's currently going against Ted Cruz for that Senate seat because he doesn't understand how a constitutional attorney hasn't pursued the constitutional tax. Now, his idea was that should we go ahead and go about a constitutional tax, that it'll actually get rid of the Fed and the IRS and a lot of other issues there that are causing this so-called swamp. Well, I was in one of Aaron Bollinger's classes, and we were throwing around some ideas, trying to figure out what is going on in our society, what we could do to potentially fix it. And while throwing that around, the idea came about kind of like a sunset law. Well, we went ahead and played around with it, and decided that we didn't want an expansive law, something that most people couldn't read or understand. So the idea of shelf life. Everyone understands an expiration date on your box of cereal or milk or what have you. And so we decided the title for this legislation would be the tax shelf life. And what it is it states every 2 years, the entire state House and Senate has to vote to keep all these laws on the books. Now, it doesn't necessarily change anything, but it has the potential to change everything. We can go ahead and therefore, once this would be passed, hold everybody accountable there in the state and state legislation or state legislatures. You have everybody would have to vote to keep every single tax on the books. Then we could see who voted for what taxes and ask them why. Before we give them the next term, they have to answer why. And that's all it basically does is it exempts them from just passing the buck and not being held accountable. And now they would have to look their constituents and say, this is why I stand for you paying these taxes. And if they don't feel those necessary, they're going to let them go. All they have to do is not vote for them. And per this legislation, they automatically become null and void, and they're completely wiped off the books.
Give some power back to the people who are electing these politicians in there, and give some transparency to see exactly what they're standing for, and not be able to hide under all these all these wacky clauses and these votes that they're putting in, and they're sneaking stuff in all the time. And that would be so clarifying to see exactly where they stand on what taxes and why they stand to support or are in opposition to each particular tax.
And then there's another one that I'm working on with some people, trying to get some grants to bring in some money. You have all these manufacturing jobs and what have you that have just up and left, and you have a lot of blight because of that. Well, if we could go ahead and bring some of this grant money in, we were discussing veterans earlier. Well, we have a lot of homeless veterans. We have a lot of homeless people that over the past decade just lost everything. It's not because they're in drugs or anything like that. It's because they don't have the skill sets that we need in our society. So therefore they're unemployable. So if we were able to go ahead and bring these grants in, the idea here is to find certain colleges out there that would bring these homeless people in, that would bring these homeless vets in, and teach them these skills: roofing, welding, pipe fitting, masonry, electrical, and so on and so forth. And while giving hands-on education to these people, giving them hands-on skills through the unions and through the colleges, we could fix up these buildings so that they're no longer a blight to the community, so that they're now usable and functionable. And then we can go ahead and put greenhouses in some of these and use them for the high schools to teach on how to grow food, how to, a healthy environment. And it also gives them a skill set.
Well, this is what's so great. Solutions come from the ground up and from the people that are involved in the, on the ground. And, the more solutions, the better. The more ideas that are out there that empower people and give people opportunity to, learn real skill sets that are, usable in the marketplace. It's all the better. It's so crazy how we're in a situation where, of course, vets are demonized, basically indirectly discriminated against because of misinformation by the mainstream media and the leftist lunatics who want to disarm them and label them as all crazy so they can get rid of that potential threat, because you have veterans who are people who know how to fight.
So, but those kind of solutions where you're looking to empower them and to get them back on their feet, and to the general population to see them as not a liability but a real resource that can contribute to society. That's wonderful. It's wonderful to get these solutions from the ground up.
Well, there are other things that I'm working on as well, and hopefully next time we speak, we can have some of those in motion. But I'm also hoping that the next time we speak, I have some good things to mention about my running for the state House Representative position against my. He is the incumbent, Neil Goodman. His father actually was in office back in the 60s and 70s, and then his father's buddy took over in the 80s and finally handed Neil Goodman in 2003. Now, if I may briefly, Neil's not a horrible person. He doesn't do anything to fight for this community since he's had roughly a half of a decade's worth of influence in this area. It is just slowly crumbling under their watch, and they're not doing anything positive.
Right, so he's not actively trying to destroy the communities, but he doesn't actively protect, or he's not doing enough to actually make a difference in the communities. Yeah, that's a problem.
Well, we just recently had this pro-life bill that was going through about the dismemberment, and he supposedly has the backing of pro-life organizations. He didn't even show up to vote for that. Now, how can you not stand for, or rather against, dismemberment of an innocent infant, and then tell me that you're doing what's healthy for the community? That's where the community begins.
Exactly. It's a Satanist practice.
It is time that we get people in office that aren't just a bunch of rhetoric, a bunch of words, a bunch of false, empty promises. We can't have any more empty suits. They're just as dangerous as the people who are trying to dismantle our liberties. We need to get people who are actively interested and willing and capable to push back, to fight against that negative machine that is tearing our communities apart. We need people who are going to reach out to the communities and bring a positive result back. We need someone who will work with the churches. Doesn't matter what denomination they are. They need to be able to work amongst the community. They need to be able to envelop an ability for these businesses to function and thrive again. We can't even have lemonade stands or college students cutting grass anymore without the proper paperwork put. I mean, when did we screw up that bad that my kids can't have a lemonade stand or a popcorn stand during the summer while everyone is having their meals?
Yeah, it's so crazy, but I'm so happy to hear that you are running, because President Trump is in office. We believe God really has chosen this man. He's put this man in that office to effect change. But again, he can't do everything, and it is incumbent upon the people and the patriots in the country to step up and stand out against the neocons, against the establishment, liberal lunatics, against the actual, deep state bureaucracies and the totalitarians that are in there, posing as nice politician people when they're really predators. And it's great because across the whole nation now, I mean, the Democratic National Party is collapsing. The Republicans are winning back so many of the seats, even locally. But again, even within the Republican Party, there has to be discernment, because there are neocons who want to continue the whole era of, big government through the, warfare state. But there are those libertarian-minded ones who want to, focus on the principles of success and the principles of empowering their local jurisdictions as opposed to the federal.
Well, real quickly, the RLC is Republican Liberty Caucus. They're the ones who gave us Mike Lee and Ted Cruz and Rand Paul and people like that. Well, if you like what Rand Paul stands for, then you need to check out the RLC, Republican Liberty Caucus. The state leader, John Kopcha, is always looking for people who are interested and liberty-minded. If you're interested in expanding liberty, if you want to go ahead and develop the liberties that our founders initially had for us to represent, if you're interested in that, you need to reach out to John Kopcha. You can find me on Facebook, John Zangaro, JOHNZANGARO. Find me on Facebook. I'll get you in touch with John Kopcha. You want to support my campaign? I would love to have any and all support from any individual out there that is tired of the status quo.
John Zangaro, folks. John, thanks so much for joining us and updating us on your historic candidacy for a PA state representative. We hope that it's going to be a good battle fight.
When you're fighting for sovereignty, the gifts that God has given all humanity, but each man and woman who stands up makes a difference, and your voice is heard as you stand up for what for humanity and for people in general. We thank you so much, John, for doing that patriotic duty and standing up, not just talking about it. You are actually stepping out and there and going for it. We have people in our community that will be hopefully doing the same in the very near future. So we are very encouraged and very empowered. Once again, folks, contact John Zangaro, and folks like John must
take office so that we can take back our local areas. John, thanks again for joining us, man. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, and God bless.
God bless, brother. Folks, thank you for joining us today.
It's been a beautiful day, and it is a gorgeous morning out there. It's going to be in the 40s today. It's a little warmer than yesterday, but we hope that everybody has a wonderful, blessed day. Give all the glory, praise, and honor to Him this day as you take each breath, as you walk each step, as you walk in faith, and as you seek to overcome the obstacles and temptations of the devil today. You will be victorious in Christ. Christ gives you all that you need, and we know that His kingdom is coming. Stand strong with your crown and rod of iron. It is the way Christ rules in His kingdom. So make sure you stand in authority with love, not in spirit of fear, but love, power, and a sound mind. And we will see you tomorrow, 5 a.m. sharp on the King's Report. God bless, Godspeed, and may His kingdom come.